Hello, thank you so much for joining me once again. Yes, I'm still here. I'm so sorry, it's been so radio silent. There is a lot going on and a lot of changes happening, and adjusting to a new kind of life is different. And I'm afraid the YouTube channel got shuffled to the wayside once I kind of did most of the stuff that people had been asking for, and I didn't really know where to go from that. I figured I would talk a little bit about that, and I don't know, maybe where I plan to take this now that the heavily requested free pattern tutorials are kind of already done. With that in mind, I'm going to show you how I alter a regular t-shirt pattern into a Raglan tee and put a transfer on it. So the first thing you gotta do is cut all of your pieces out, and I use a fresh printout to do this because if you have altered something and then altered it again and then altered it again, I've noticed that precision suffers. So sometimes it's nice to go back to kind of a standard square one. In this case, the Smart Doll free t-shirt pattern, which I love because it's excellent. And you might notice I am cutting the pieces right down the middle, and that is because it makes it so I only have to alter one side and I don't have to try to make it perfectly symmetrical, because if I put that on a fold and cut it, then it should come out symmetrical. First thing I do is alter the collar. I wanted a more crew neck collar as opposed to the V-neck, and that's pretty straightforward. So while I do that, I guess I can tell you a little bit about my predicament and why finding footage for you guys has been so difficult. I spend a lot more time in the sewing room. I am making things constantly and I love it, and you would think that would mean I would have so much new footage for videos, but the reality of it is I'm doing two things now. I'm drafting stuff that I want to sell, and I am making like 24 t-shirts at a time, again, because I want to sell them. So I don't get to do as many fun one-off for me projects that would make good footage for a YouTube video. Like this project, for instance. This is a t-shirt that I could never sell. It has a name brand on it, and I absolutely 100% want to respect copyright laws, which dictate that if it's not mine, I can't slap it on a shirt. I looked into it. It's complicated. There's nuances that seem like splitting hairs, and I've kind of decided that if it's not mine, I ain't putting it on a shirt, because I don't want to cross those companies. I really like Nintendo. I don't want to make them mad at me. So it feels like this is a pretty good project to show you, since it's not something that's going to go up in the shop. But why can't I show you stuff that's going up in the shop? I mean, I could, right? Like, there's no rules against it. It just feels weird and self-serving in some way. I mean, I guess I'm putting videos out there for attention, so that's already self-serving. But I don't know. So I've been feeling very morally conflicted with regards to what should and shouldn't end up on YouTube and what should and shouldn't end up in the shop. For the shop, it ended up being a pretty simple decision. I'm not going to push any boundaries. I am not going to sit in any legal gray areas. Morally, it wasn't sitting right with me anyway. So anything licensed, anything copyrighted, I am not touching with a 10-foot pole. Simple. For YouTube, I'm still not sure what exactly is going to be best to go up on YouTube and what is not. I think I'm going to keep chewing on that and hopefully come up with something. In the meantime, for the t-shirt pattern, I have just been going through, I basically made the shapes that I knew they needed to be just from looking at other patterns for this style of t-shirt, and then started measuring my seams to true them up and make them equal. So if they get sewn together, they need to be the same length, regardless of the seam allowance. You want the actual seam line. So with that complete, it was time to start sewing. All right, so we have our pieces. And if you're wondering how do you find perfectly exactly matching rib versus regular knit, I literally just purloin things from existing t-shirts all the time. Sometimes you can get them on sale at Michael's or Joann's, and I just stock up on the biggest ones I can find because I like consistency, and it was the easiest way I thought I could get not only consistency between colors, but consistency between the textures of different colors. Because sometimes it seems like Joann's only has so many options when it comes to jersey knits. Okay, since this is a different style of sleeve, the construction is different. We're gonna start by pinning our sleeves. We've got the short side is the front side, so this is our front piece. We're gonna do right sides facing, which matters a lot with this kind of material because you can tell just by looking at it, it looks totally different. These are honestly excellent if regular sleeves make you nervous. This is a great way to kind of ease your way into sleeves. And then I'm also going to do my back, but only to one of them. And you'll see why in a sec. It ends up making the collar a lot easier to do it this way. So we're just going to do either straight stitches or very, very slightly zigzagged if you want a little bit of stretch in there, which is kind of recommended. I have no idea where that dark thread came from and why I didn't do something about it immediately. I only now noticed it in editing. Oh, there it goes. I personally find it is better to overstretch your collar. It's a little bit easier to come back from than to have it not stretched out enough, and then your collar just stands straight up and it doesn't look right. I also recommend pinning it in a way that you can keep the collar on top, so you can sort of judge how stretched out it is while it's going through the machine. And I prefer to leave the extra on the end in case I need to adjust along the way. So before trimming, before cutting, before any of that, first thing I do is go to my ironing board and see if I can get this to lay flat. And it does. It's actually, in my opinion, laying just fine for a collar. So we're gonna trim off our extra. I usually safety pin this to the t-shirt that I have cannibalized it from for future projects. And then we can finally stitch this seam together. And I like doing it this way because even though you do end up with a seam, it is near the back and there's only one of them, so it's not so bad. Important bits to try and do is try to make sure that your inner fabrics are as lined up as this edge, which of course you want to be as lined up as you can. So we're good there. Alright, so now it's looking a lot like a shirt. This is one of those seams that it doesn't hurt to beat on a little bit, either with your iron or a hammer and anvil. A lot of times I am too lazy to get the hammer and anvil, so I just kind of smack it with the iron a bit. No, I'm not kidding, I actually do that. It works. It works. And then I also like to kind of trim these little corners down so that they're less likely to show through. Being very, very careful not to hit the rest of your stuff. And you can also trim these little corners down because, as always with doll clothes, getting rid of as much bulk as you can never hurts. I do tend to leave this because I don't want my whole seam to unravel, so it's still sewn together nicely. We just got rid of that bulk. And from the other side, it looks pretty darn good. Like, it blends in pretty well. I'm always happy with it. Now, like any other t-shirt, we turn it inside out and we stitch along both side seams. Alright, so I am very pleased with how this turned out. I think I might, in the future, just for funsies, play around with this angle a little bit, maybe have it angle in a little bit more. I don't think it's necessary per se, because it looks pretty nice this way, but I gotta try it before I consider this fully drafted. Now, as for the shirt, this is a pretty solid shirt just by itself. We are not done yet. We are adding a transfer, and I like to put it on the doll to decide where I want the transfer to go, because every single time I have not done that, it has ended in absolute disaster. So, we very gently add a pin, if it ever decides to go through, where we want that to start. I think that'll look pretty good. We'll put one on the bottom too, just to be safe. And then very carefully take this off. Okay. As for putting on the transfer, all I can recommend is absolutely read the instructions provided. Just follow their directions as closely as you possibly can. This is a light colored transfer, which is why this is white. So it needed to be reversed, as you can see. We put it down, and I'm using these as guides for up and down because we want to make sure that it is centered as much as possible. And then I'm going to iron this very, very carefully, and we'll be back for the big reveal. Alright, now you want this to be cool, like cool to the touch. You want all the heat from the iron to have dissipated. And see how it looks. Oh, it's being persnickety. Come on. Oh yeah. I love it. I'm going to put something over top of this. Don't iron this once you've peeled the bit. Put something over top, and I'm going to try to iron that corner down a little bit. But otherwise, I would say this is a big success. I am in love with this vintage nerd look. I love it. I love it so much. What inspired it? These, of course. Oh, they're so cute. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to resist them because you can customize them. You can swap out this inner fabric with something you make yourself to match any shirt. But of course, I needed a shirt to match the originals. I just love it. So you might be like, wow, those pants have come out ages ago, and you're totally right. This footage is very old. I have posted this picture and many others, including this shirt, because I do really love it a lot, and I do think it turned out pretty great. So, all in all, this was a huge success of a project. I'm happy to be back into editing and getting videos out for you. If you have thoughts on where and the direction you want things to go, let me know. Things like, I want more of just the sewing, or I want to know more details about how you draft, which, by the way, is a dangerous question to ask because a lot of my drafting is making stuff up as I go, which might not be as useful as you want it to be. Just fair warning. But yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you again soon.